And it's like the start of a new section. What we've read so far in Book 1, Canto 1, that was one section. Now there's another section starting. There, walled apart by its own innerness, in a mystical barrage of dynamic light, he saw a lone, immense, high curved world pile, erect like a mountain chariot of the gods, motionless under an inscrutable sky. As if from matter's plinth and viewless base to a top as viewless, a carved sea of worlds, climbing with foam-maned waves to the supreme, ascended towards breadths immeasurable. It hoped to soar into the ineffable's reign. 100 levels raised it to the unknown. So it towered up to heights intangible and disappeared in the hushed, conscious vast, as climbs a storied temple tower to heaven, built by the aspiring soul of man to live near to his dream of the invisible. Infinity calls to it as it dreams and climbs. Its spire touches the apex of the world, mounting into great voiceless stillnesses. It marries the earth to screened eternities. Amid the many systems of the One, made by an interpreting creative joy, alone it points us to our journey back out of our long self-loss in nature's deeps. Planted on earth, it holds in it all realms. It is a brief compendium of the vast. This was the single stair to being's goal. A summary of the stages of the spirit, its copy of the cosmic hierarchies, refashioned in our secret air of self, a subtle pattern of the universe. It is within, below, without, above. Acting upon this visible nature's scheme, it wakens our earth matter's heavy doors to think and feel and to react to joy. It models in us our diviner paths, lifts mortal mind into a greater air, makes yearn this life of flesh to intangible aims, links the body's death with immortality's call. Out of the swoon of the inconscience, it labors towards a superconscient light. If earth were all, and this were not in her, thought could not be, nor life delight's response. Only material forms could then be her guests. Driven by an inanimate world force, earth by this golden superfluity bore thinking man, and more than man shall bear. This higher scheme of being is our cause and holds the key to our ascending fate. It calls out of our dense mortality the conscious spirit nursed in matter's house. The living symbol of these conscious planes, its influences and godheads of the unseen, its unthought logic of reality's acts, arisen from the unspoken truth in things, have fixed our inner life's slow-scaled degrees. Its steps are paces of the soul's return from the deep adventure of material birth, a ladder of delivering ascent and rungs that nature climbs to deity. You start, Martin?
Der wohl bei its own innernet, in mystical barrage of dynamic life, so alone immense high curved world height, erect like mountain chariot to God, motionless under an inscrutable sky.
Yes. Any difficult words? Barrage.
Barrage is a dam.
A barrage is a dam. Yes, a blockage. During the First World War, it was used for when all the cannons fired at once so that nobody could possibly pass. Barrage. But this is a barrage, a dam or barrier of dynamic light which separates this world pile from everything else, walled apart by its own innerness. This is a world pile that is not outward but inward. But still, it is like a huge mountain, alone, a mountain standing by itself. It's curved like the temple towers here in South India. Do you remember Ganga Konda Cholapuram. It's got that beautiful curve, no? And he compares it also to a chariot, to one of those temple chariots that we have here, where they take the gods out in them. And those chariots and gopurams and temple towers, they have many levels. Even those levels of the gopuram, they represent worlds. If you look carefully at them, you can see the beings and the animals and spirits of those worlds there looking down on us. So it's like that. So it's like that, a mountain chariot. That means it could move and carry the gods, just like the temple chariots do.
There's a ball of air in a wall. When there is a AC inside,
Yes.
it is closed. But nowadays it's big ball, open it.
Yes.
But there is a wall of air.
Yes. So if you could imagine a barrier like that, but it's a barrier of light. So it's like a chariot, but it's not moving. It's motionless under an inscrutable sky, a sky that doesn't give any clues about what it might be or where. Kamla?
As we scrub backwards, this Jesus still calm but fever, a car, sea and bird. Climbing the storm, man, leaves his face. Ascended towards breath, immeasurable.
Yeah, let's pause there. So many of our temples here in South India, it's as if they're built on a platform. You know, the actual building, and you go up a few steps and then there's a flat platform. That's a plinth. Our Sri Aurobindo statue, it's standing on a plinth. So he says matter is the plinth on which this huge world pile is based. Matter is the base. He says, of course, we can't see the very base. It's invisible. It's in the inconscient. And the top of the world pile also can't be seen. But in between, it's as if there are waves and waves and waves and waves of worlds. A carved sea of worlds. Carved. You carve wood to make a figure. A sculptor carves stone or wood, yes. So, but it's as if these waves are carved. Some wonderful sculptor has carved them. But they look as if they have foam. The waves foam on their surfaces. And they are mounting up and up and up and up to the Supreme. Ascended towards breadths, broad spaces, immeasurable.
Synonymous to pedestal?
A plinth is like a pedestal. Yeah. Yes. Okay, who's next? Rita.
Before he saw into the incredible beginning, 100 letters raised it to the unknown.
Continue.
So it powered up to heights intangible and disappeared in the hushed conscious war as climbs a slowly temple tower to heaven, built by the aspiring soul of man to live near to his dream of the invisible.
Yes. So this world pile is trying to soar, to get up, 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 as high as possible, into the realm, the reign of the ineffable, the one who cannot be described or expressed. And it has many, many layers. Not literally 100 layers, but many, many, many layers. And they are raising it up to the unknown. And Sri Aurobindo says it's like a temple tower. We human beings, we build these high buildings, especially sacred buildings. This one towers up so high that nobody can reach, disappeared in the hushed, conscious vast. That's how the world pile climbs up. And he says it's the same way as a temple tower with many stories, with many levels, rises up to heaven. That's what the temple tower has been built by aspiring human beings who want to build a building that reaches to heaven, to live near to his dream of the invisible. We look up to the heights and we think we can't see the gods, but they are there. So let's try and reach them. Human beings have been doing this from the earliest times, that they could build as high as they could, and we're still doing it. Nowadays it's more commercial than religious, but still the idea that let's go as high as we can. Dana.
Infinity calls to you as it breathing concerns. Its fire touches the effects of the rose, mounting into great voiceless stillnesses. It marries the world to three eternities.
Yes. So infinity is calling to it. It doesn't want to stop, as it dreams and climbs this pile of worlds. And its spire, the topmost pointy bit on the top, touches the apex, the highest point of the world. The pile goes mounting into great, voiceless stillnesses, silent spaces. And what it does, the whole tower and the whole pile, it marries the earth, it connects the earth to eternities that we can't see or feel. It's a connecting link. Joel.
Amid the many systems of the one, made by an interpreting creative joy, alone it points us to our journey back, out of our long self-loss in nature's deeds, planted on earth, it holds in it all realms. It is a brief compendium of the vast.
Yes, thank you. So, the one has expressed itself in many systems, This interpreting, creative joy of the world force. But only this system, this world pile, is pointing us to our journey back. We have come from those heights. and we have come down here. We've come down level by level, or maybe we've just plunged straight down, but we have to climb back up all these levels out of our long self-lost in nature's deeps. Here we are. We've lost touch with our true selves. We can only get back into touch with our higher selves by mounting up these levels. And it's planted on earth in matter, but it holds in it all the planes of existence. This is a very important thing that Sri Aurobindo is telling us. It's part of the Vedic knowledge, the teaching of the mystics, that this tower of worlds, of planes of existence, where is it? Where are these worlds? They are in us. It's planted on earth, it holds in it all realms, and it's a brief compendium of the vast, of the vastness of the whole creation. A compendium is like an encyclopedia. It's like an encyclopedia or a collection of many, many stories or bits of knowledge. And it's a brief compendium. It's like a summary of everything that's in the universe. Will you read?
This was the single step to being pure, a summary of the stages of the spirit. It's a copy of the cosmic hierarchies refashioned in our secret air of self, a subtle pattern of the universe.
Yes, so this is another way of saying it. This is the single stair. We have to go up this stair, this ladder, to the goal of our being. Why are we here on earth? In order to climb all those steps. It's a summary of all the stages of the spirit. It's like a copy, an image of the cosmic hierarchies. It means the way that the planes of the universe are arranged in order. That's copied in us, refashioned in our secret air of self, in our inner being, in our psychological self. It's a subtle pattern of the universe. It's as if we're carrying all these levels of existence within us. And because we're carrying them within us, we can contact them, and we are influenced by all of them. And when we were reading The Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo told us that very often when we leave the body, when the inner being leaves the body, it explores these worlds. And through its experiences in these different worlds, it grows, and then it returns to the body, to a new body. Alice.
Acting upon this discipline.
No, before that, this.
It is within, below, without, above. Acting upon this visible nature's scheme, it wakens our earth matter's heavy dose to think and feel and to react to joy. It models in us our diviner paths, lifts mortal mind into a greater air, makes yearn this life of flesh to intangible aims, links the body's death with immortality's call, Out of the swoon, awakened conscience, it labors towards our superconscient light.
Yes. So, it is within us, it's below us, it's without us. It means it's outside of us, around us, and above us.
But now I lost the thread. Who is
This pile of worlds, this scheme, this single stair to being's goal, all the levels. And this series of worlds acts on, it influences this scheme of visible material nature. And it has the effect of waking up this heavy doze, this inconscient, sleepy state of matter gets woken up by the influence of these other planes. Otherwise, how would earth matter learn to think and feel and react to joy? It's that world stair which is modeling in us, preparing them, shaping them, our diviner parts, our parts that are not so earthly and material, that are subtler and more divine. It's the influence of those other worlds that lifts our mortal mind from its preoccupation with sense experiences and earthy matters. It lifts it up into a greater air, and it makes our life, our physical life, it makes it long for things which are not physical, which can't be touched, intangible aims. It links the death of the body with immortality's call. The physical body has to, it can't keep up with the need of the spirit. Eventually it dies. But this world of, this pile of worlds, it connects. When the body dies, the inner parts get linked to the call, the appeal of immortality. This stair of worlds is laboring, it's making an effort upwards towards a superconscient light. It starts from this swoon. When you swoon, you lose consciousness. You just fall down because your brain's not working anymore. The inconscience. That's where it starts from. But it's moving up and up and up and up and up towards a superconscient light. Kanapan.
It's the earth one.
Yeah.
If earth were all, and this were brought with her, thought could not be, nor life delight response. Only material forms could then be, and else, driven by an inanimate world force.
Yes. So this is important, no? If matter were everything, if the world were really only matter, and this pile of other planes of existence were not in matter, then thought would not be possible. The delight of the life force, responding to touches, couldn't happen. Only material forms could be the guest of the world force, no? And those material forms would be driven by an inanimate world force, and force without life or consciousness or senses, nothing. We forget this. We are materialists. We think everything depends on matter. But actually, if there were only matter, nothing else could be. Sebastian.
First, by this golden superfluity, both thinking man and more than man shall bear. This higher scheme of being is our cause and holds the key to our ascending fate. It calls out for our dense mortality, the conscious spirit nursed in matter's house.
Yes. Superfluity means more than enough. Too much even sometimes. Something superfluous means it's too much. This is a golden superfluity. It's pouring over this richness, all this extra stuff that's not matter. Earth, by this golden superfluity, because all this other stuff is in her, she could give birth to thinking beings like us. And in future, she will give birth to more things, higher beings. No? And he says this higher scheme of things is actually the cause of our existence. It's not a product of matter, it's the other way round. No? This higher scheme of things holds the key to our ascending fate. The fact that it exists makes it possible for us to grow and evolve and become more than just animals. It's this higher scheme of things and all these other levels of existence that are calling out of our dense mortality, this dense material stuff which has to die. Out of this dense mortality, it calls the conscious spirit, which is living within this house of matter, which is our body. I'll read the next one. The living symbol of these conscious planes, its influences and Godheads of the unseen, its unthought logic of realities acts, arisen from the unspoken truth in things, have fixed our inner life's slow-scaled degrees. All these levels and the influences and the divine beings and this kind of logic that is there in the reality of how things really are, this reality which has grown out of the unspoken truth in things. These have fixed these degrees, these steps that we have to ascend as we go up. The steps of this world stair are paces, each one is a step of the soul's return from the deep adventure of material birth. The soul has come down for an adventure here on these deeper, lower planes. Now it has to go back up. No? So these steps, these levels, make a ladder of delivering ascent by which the soul can escape upwards. No? They are rungs of a ladder that nature climbs in evolution, no? Starting from the bottom and evolving further and further. Nature climbs to deity, to the divine being. Let's read a bit further, Martin.
Its steps are phases of the soul's return from the deep adventure of material growth, the ladder of delivering ascent, and run with nature's line to deity.
Yeah. Kamla.
Once in the vigil of a deathless case, these grades and marks attain downward plunge. The wide and broad leap of the goddess fall.
One more line.
Our life is a hollow card of the Supreme.
Yes. So he says he's been talking about the way up, but once these steps were steps of descent. Once, in the vigil of a deathless gaze, some supreme being, deathless being, was watching. And as it watched, these grades, these steps, had marked the giant downward plunge of nature. Even, she didn't go step by step, she fell all the way down from the top to the bottom, the wide and prone leap of a Godhead's fall. He says, our life is a holocaust of the Supreme, a holocaust, a sacrifice.
What is it, prone? Prone?
Prone flat. Yeah, so it's not going step by step, it's really falling flat down. Who fell? The great World Mother, by her sacrifice, has made her soul the body of our state. The body of our state is somehow matter, but where has this matter come from? It's somehow a dense form of the soul of the great World Mother.
Shraddhavan, the meaning of Holocaust is sacrifice.
Yes, it is. Nowadays we are, in another context, we think about the Second World War and the Holocaust of the Jews and so on, yes. I think its original Greek meaning is a burnt offering. It's an offering, that's something that you burn and offer to the gods. So that it's, in our lifetimes, it's come to mean that terrible sacrifice of the Jewish race and nation.
Life is terrible anyway.
And in the next line, he uses this word. No, he says, "The great World Mother, by her sacrifice, has made her soul the body of our state. She's accepted sorrow and unconsciousness, the Supreme Divine Mother. Divinity's lapse, its fall from its own splendors, has woven the many patterned ground of all we are. All this matter, all these different elements." You'll read, Rita? An idol of self. Yeah.
An idol of self is our mortality. Our earth is a fragment and a residue. Her power is packed with the stuff of greater worlds, and steeped in their color lusts, dimmed by her drowns. An atavism of higher births is hers. Her sleep is stirred by their buried memories, recalling the lost spheres from which they fell.
Yes. So our mortal state, our physical substance and our mortal state, he says, is an idol, an image of self, of the self of everything. And our earth, this physical matter of ours, he says, is just a fragment of something much vaster and a residue, what is left over. When you've finished the bottle, there may be just some powder in the bottom, no? A residue. The power of the earth is packed with the stuff of greater worlds, non-material worlds. And even our earth stuff is steeped in their color lusters. If you have some nice herbs, you will steep them in water and get a lovely tea. No? Or if you have a white dress and you want it to be some other color, you will mix some dye and put the white dress in and steep it for a long time until it's full of the color. So our earth is steeped like that. It's full of the essence of colors and lights that have come from those other planes. Here, they've become dim. The colors have become dim because Earth is sleepy and unconscious. No? But she's carrying within herself an atavism of higher births is hers. Atavism is usually a negative word. It means things we've inherited from our primitive ancestors or our animal pasts, tendencies in us that are not really human, that belong to lower levels of existence. But here he's talking about an atavism of higher births, something she's brought with her from those other spheres. So this sleepiness of matter is stirred by the buried memories from those higher levels. It's like dreams, half memories, recalling those lost spheres, those higher realms from which they fell.
B-U-R-Y, when it is bury, pronounce it, you should pronounce bury.
Buried. You mean because of the spelling? Yeah, B-U-R-Y, to bury, yes. Sorry, English. We can just read one more sentence. You can read it.
Unsatisfied forces in her bosom move. They are partners of her greater growing fate and her return to immortality. They consent to share her doom of birth and death. They kindle partial gleams of the hour and guide her blind, laborious spirit to compose a meager image of the mighty hope.
Yes. So those unsatisfied forces are coming from those higher levels, no? But they're moving somehow in matter. And so they share this evolutionary growing fate, this return to immortality. She's fallen to mortality, but can return. So these other forces, they agree, they accept to share Earth's doom of birth and death. They even do it voluntarily. They gain something by accepting, no? And when they are here, part of the evolutionary process, they kindle, like lighting a fire, partial gleams of the all, of the whole universe. And they drive that blind, laborious, struggling spirit of earth to compose images, meager images. They're unsatisfactory images, but still they're images of the mighty whole. And that one who was watching that deathless gaze, no? That calm and luminous intimacy within, approves her work and guides the unseeing power. So the conscious spirit is within and is guiding this whole process. That's where we should stop today. It's such a wonderful knowledge, and it's expressed in such wonderful images. And if we really can digest and assimilate this knowledge, it will make such a big difference to us in our lives. There, walled apart by its own innerness, in a mystical barrage of dynamic light, he saw a lone, immense, high-curved world pile, erect like a mountain chariot of the gods, motionless under an inscrutable sky. As if from matter's plinth and viewless base to a top as viewless, a carved sea of worlds, climbing with foam-maned waves to the supreme, ascended towards breadths immeasurable. It hoped to soar into the ineffable's reign. 100 levels raised it to the unknown. So it towered up to heights intangible and disappeared in the hushed, conscious vast, as climbs a storied temple tower to heaven, built by the aspiring soul of man to live near to his dream of the invisible. Infinity calls to it as it dreams and climbs. Its spire touches the apex of the world. Mounting into great voiceless stillnesses, it marries the earth to screened eternities. Amid the many systems of the one, made by an interpreting creative joy, alone it points us to our journey back out of our long self-loss in nature's deeps. Planted on earth, it holds in it all realms. It is a brief compendium of the vast. This was the single stair
to being's goal. A summary of the stages of the spirit, its copy of the cosmic hierarchies, refashioned in our secret air of self, a subtle pattern of the universe. It is within, below, without, above. Acting upon this visible nature scheme, it wakens our earth matter's heavy doze to think and feel and to react to joy. It models in us our diviner parts, lifts mortal mind into a greater air, makes yearn this life of flesh to intangible aims, links the body's death with immortality's call. Out of the swoon of the inconscience, it labors towards a superconscient light. If earth were all, and this were not in her, thought could not be, nor life delight's response. Only material forms could then be her guests, driven by an inanimate world force. Earth, by this golden superfluity, bore thinking man, and more than man shall bear. This higher scheme of being is our course, and holds the key to our ascending fate. It calls out of our dense mortality the conscious spirit nursed in matter's house. The living symbol of these conscious planes, its influences and godheads of the unseen, its unthought logic of reality's acts, arisen from the unspoken truth in things, have fixed our inner life's slow-scaled degrees. Its steps are paces of the soul's return from the deep adventure of material birth, a ladder of delivering ascent and rungs that nature climbs to deity. Once, in the vigil of a deathless gaze, these grades had marked her giant downward plunge, the wide and prone leap of a Godhead's fall. Our life is a holocaust of the Supreme. The great World Mother, by her sacrifice, has made her soul the body of our state. Accepting sorrow and unconsciousness, divinity's lapse from its own splendors, wove the many-patterned ground of all we are. An idol of self is our mortality. Our earth is a fragment and a residue. Her power is packed with the stuff of greater worlds, and steeped in their colour lustres, dimmed by her drowse. An atavism of higher births is hers. Her sleep is stirred by their buried memories, recalling the lost spheres from which they fell. Unsatisfied forces in her bosom move. They are partners of her greater growing fate and her return to immortality. They consent to share her doom of birth and death. They kindle partial gleams of the all and drive her blind, laborious spirit to compose a meagre image of the mighty whole.